Okay, so let's go ahead and go into this. I had to cut what I had and redo it because I wasn't able to zoom up on the chart aspects that I'm looking at here. So when we look at here, we are looking at the 24th of January, so that was obviously yesterday, at about midday, and this is for the west coast of the United States, as I said before. So we look at here and we have Mercury in the 8th house with Pluto, and you see that T-square that's still going on here that I've been concerned about here. And then also you see a trine with the Leo moon and also Saturn right there. So there's a trine of fire going on, as well as all this Plutonian energy bouncing off of this Uranian energy. So yesterday, definitely midday, there's probably a lot of accidents or whatever going on, but we'll go ahead and speed forward now. So after, once we hit into 2 o'clock, as of yesterday, you see here that Mercury now is gone stationary. So stationary is obviously when it looks like that the planet is no longer ingressing forward or backward. So it's the energy itself is going to start dwindling down and calming down now. Since obviously most people can tell that there's a difference between when it's retrograde and when it's direct. And I've heard some people say, well, usually this happens for me when this is direct or retrograde. There's not concrete norms that are expected per se. Like, I know that everybody goes over the whole what to expect during a Mercury retrograde, but those are very vague, mundane concepts. Basically, the way that it works is whatever's been the current norm for now, like in the current time frame, whatever Mercury influences to create that current norm will go exactly the opposite. So that is essentially how it would work. And depending on what it would be conjunct with, especially generational planet-wise, which Pluto is a generational planet, will determine how it fits. So people have been wondering why there's been so many deaths lately. Well, a lot of that comes into play for multiple reasons. There has been some squares obviously going on, and just you see right here that there's a trine with Uranus. Uranus and Pluto, the Uranus-Pluto square, has obviously been causing a lot of destruction and chaos. So again, as I've said in a previous video before, anything that has any aspects with Pluto or Uranus or both will be emulating those kind of themes. So Saturn has to do with death, the timekeeper, and just, you know, your overall lifespan throughout this world. So that would be why that would be affecting certain people. And see, Venus actually has to do with cancer, like the actual disease of cancer. So when it was conjunct, or right next to Saturn, Saturn's technically a generational influence, it was then killing off people that were having terminal cancer. Because as you see, the square right here that's been continuing to line up and off and on with Chiron, Chiron's your weakness. So anybody's weakness, if you have like a chronic or terminal illness or whatever, when those two were conjunct together and there was that square with that pretty much was a lot of what played into some of the famous artists dying that had cancer, or where there was that huge wave of people who had cancer that were dying. So with Mercury being conjunct with Pluto, and then the following day it's actually going to go right back on top of Pluto, we're going to have more deaths to do with vehicular accidents, mechanical, traveling, any like day-to-day kind of routines that will likely be fatal, and they would be sudden events that would happen. So then we go ahead and fast forward here. So you see that Mercury's stationary. We keep going here. It does this little dance around, and now we're at, now we're at the 26th, okay? So you notice that it's still stationary right there, but also as it's about to go direct, we do have a couple of lines, square lines, that are becoming thicker lines. And let's see, right there. Okay, so at 2:16 p.m. on January 26th, so that's tomorrow, that is when, so basically midday is when it'll go from being stationary to direct. And then as soon as it goes direct, it'll be within a few hours after that, so around dinner time, 6, 7 o'clock, it's actually going to be directly on top with Pluto again. So that will be, remember when I said that there was like the Paris attack and like the San Bernardino attack when Uranus was retrograde, and that once it went direct on Christmas, that there would be other events that would happen similar to that, just potentially worse, or like it would be something that would be spread worldwide or be affecting way more casualties or creating way more casualties than that did. That same kind of concept there is now going to happen with Mercury. So since Mercury was retrograde when a lot of these deaths were occurring, especially any vehicular deaths or deaths by transportation, are going to be magnified now. And particularly, actually, right where we're looking at, we have Lilith in the third house of transportation and communication, and then we have here in the fifth house we have Pluto and Mercury, obviously right on top of each other, and then we have Uranus in the ninth house, which is for travel or long distance travel, foreign travel, and then you see Chiron right here also in the eighth house. So any kind of that would just spell out directly to me that if anybody has a car that doesn't run that well, or if there's any mechanical issues going on with planes, trains, etc., and somebody decides to make the poor decision to just use it anyway, this is the perfect recipe for there to be some sort of horrible, fatal freak accident. Just FYI. So rethink any of your trips if you're going somewhere tomorrow. And then, you know, as we keep speeding along through here, you see that they're going to be at 15 degrees with each other for a good minute into the 27th. And the only other concerns that I'll be having is there's obviously going to be some more T-square concerns, but that's essentially what I'm bringing up for Mercury retrograde. So there will be less issues, obviously, with networks, signals, wireless devices. If you've been having any computer issues, like I do on a daily basis, pretty much, those will be resolved, hopefully. Any kind of airhead shit, which is, you know, usually my territory, should be resolved. But as it comes to freak accidents and potential just sudden events that cause severe injury, that, although it's been attributed to Mercury retrograde's played into that, that is a different aspect on itself that will continue on and potentially get worse. So we can be happy that Mercury retrograde's over, but unfortunately, the rest of January and going into early February doesn't look that great. And honestly, in my personal opinion, well, it's not my personal opinion, it's just my interpretation, Aquarius being associated with trauma and the sun being associated with life and vitality, just like Mars is in a way, I don't really see there just being like some random accidents and people recovering from them. I would see that they would be detrimental to their lives. So once we're out of Aquarius season, I'll feel a little better, but then also we're going to be having some eclipses when we get into the Pisces season, so we'll just take it one step at a time right now. All I can say is that any accidents or events or any kind of attacks or anything like that will happen to anyone will come completely out of nowhere, and nobody will have any clue that it's going to happen. So preparing for everything that you could potentially think of, or the worst, or whatever, or at least expecting it, that's my best advice.